The Illuminate Arts and Faith Conference in Chattanooga, Tennessee wants to help you find your tribe. Do you get way too excited about quoting Wendell Berry or C.S. Lewis in conversations with coworkers? Does your Spotify playlist include hymns, a little jazz, and a whole lot of Andrew Peterson? Join your tribe at Illuminate March 31 and April 1 for education and inspiration from speakers Russ Ramsey, Douglas McKelvey, John Hendricks, and others. Find a complete list of session topics and ticket information at southern.edu/illuminate.
In 2024, I set out to meet as many poets as I could and spend an hour with each one. I got more than I bargained for, more insight, more clarity, more hope. It's proved to be one of the richest highlights of my life. 17 writers, 17 deeply human conversations that made me sit up and pay attention. Franz Kafka once said, if the book we're reading doesn't wake us up with a blow to the head, what are we reading for? A book must be the axe for the frozen sea within us. And that's what I hope this new book will do. I hope it wakes us up, my friends. I hope these conversations will be the catalyst for something to be reawakened, re-enchanted, and reinvigorated. It's called An Axe for the Frozen Sea, Conversations with Poets About What Matters Most. I'm Ben Palpin, and I hope you'll come and listen in as I spend a little time with poets like Lucy Shaw, Malcolm Guite, Dana Gioia, and Lee Young Lee. Pull up a chair at the table as we dig into what it means to write well and to live well. An Axe for the Frozen Sea is now available from Rabbit Room Press. Visit the store at rabbitroom.com, or better yet, ask about it at your favorite bookseller.
Not only is it so difficult to spot the thing that you're trying to see through the binoculars, because suddenly your point of view is so small, but when you look through the binoculars and you finally see that thing, if it even remotely moves, it's hard to like keep up. So it's a horrible way to see somebody from a distance with binoculars. You know what you actually have to do? You actually have to get close. Proximity is going to be the key to actually seeing them, because once you're close, you don't have to see binoculars anymore, and they can move quickly and you can still see everything about them, right?
Welcome to the Habit Podcast, conversations with writers about writing. I'm Jonathan Rogers, your host. Carlos Whittaker is committed to creating spaces, online and in person, where people are safe to engage in conversation about the topics that matter most, but are often avoided. He's a speaker, he's the host of the podcast Human Hope with Carlos Whittaker, and he is the cultivator and nurturer of a huge and engaged Instagram community he calls his Instafamilia. He's just released a book called How to Human, 3 Ways to Share Life Beyond What Distracts, Divides, and Disconnects Us. Carlos Whittaker, I'm so glad to have you on the Habit Podcast today. Thanks for making time for me.
Thanks for having me, Jonathan. So good to see your face again.
That's right. You and I just met this morning, but we actually met in person because I happened to be recording at a friend's house right around the corner from your house.
Yes, and I happened to be sitting on the porch and having my morning coffee, and we met face to face. It was so funny. I just keep laughing about it. I think that was hilarious.
Well, and of course, I knew it was your house because you had posted a picture of your Christmas decorations. I'm like, I recognize those Christmas decorations.
That's right. You got it, man.
So
Nobody you know what's funny is actually on Google Maps, if you search for my home, put my address in, the Google Maps car that takes photos of the street view drove by my house last year at Christmas time. So my house always has all my inflatables up in Google. It's great.
That is hilarious. All right. So you have a new book out. The title is How to Human, not How to Be Human, but How to Human. We can talk about that.
Yes.
That choice of diction, perhaps.
Yes. Yes.
And you help me out with the subtitle because it's a kind of a long subtitle.
Yeah. How to Human, 3 Ways to Share Life Beyond What Distracts, Divides, and Disconnects Us.
Great.
There it is.
So, how would you summarize the message of this book? What are you hoping readers will take away from the book?
Yeah, absolutely. I this is a different book than I've ever written before. So, this is my 5th book, and this one I'm touching on maybe parts of the human condition that, I feel like I'm gifted to touch without people being as triggered if maybe somebody else were to touch that part of their heart.
Okay.
I feel like and the reason I wrote it is because I feel like I'm in a season where people with various viewpoints on hard things that we've gone through the last 3 years, maybe have seen some relationships disintegrate, relationships that were never built on these issues, but suddenly disintegrated because of certain issues. Mm-hmm. And I just felt like as I looked around in 2022, that we'd been knocked off course just a degree or two, as far as humanity. Like we've forgotten that we can actually not only be able to stand somebody that doesn't think like us or vote like us or whatever, but we can actually be in like true life-giving relationship with people that may view the world differently than we do. And so hence the title, How to Human, just reminding us again, like how it is we get back to being human again towards each other. And of course, the human condition isn't perfect, right? It's messy, there's pain, there's trauma. But I think if we intentionally apply a few of these principles that I speak about in the book, I feel like our own small circles and our own smaller worlds will heal, and that's really what everybody's looking for.
Yeah. Of course, we're fallen, right? It's there are difficulties in being a human being, but it doesn't have to be as hard as it's been.
Right? No, it doesn't. Like it. I mean, you just look back through. People are always like, I hear people say all the time, "Oh my gosh, things are bad and they're just getting worse. It's never been this bad." And I'm like, I mean, have you read the history books? like, can I remind you that humanity has been bad before and it will be bad again? And so what we can do this.
Yeah. Okay. So a really important theme in your book is the idea of seeing, like, we have this habit of seeing what we expect to see instead of seeing what's actually in front of us. Right. And it seems like here, to an exaggerated degree lately, what we expect to see from people that we disagree with is even worse than what, is true about those people. We somehow have gotten out of the habit of giving people the benefit of the doubt. If we ever were in the habit, it seems like we're less in the habit than we. I hear you when you say it's naive to suggest that things have never been this bad, and still there are some unique ways that we've gotten out of the habit of giving people the benefit of the doubt when we disagree with them. So I'd love to hear you talk about a little bit this idea of you encourage people to actually see and not to decide ahead of time what I'm going to see. Yes. Right? And I know even when I look at something online, I'm admitting a terrible habit, and that is instead of judging a statement on its face, I say, do I already agree or disagree with the person who made this statement?
Yeah.
So anyway, the floor is open. I'm sorry. That was more of an introduction I need to give you. Here you go.
No, that
got a lot of thinking about this.
That's great. It's hard to see past our opinion on the statement, on whatever it is the point of view is. I understand that. Like, I'm not pretending that that's not difficult for all of us, myself included. I have very strong convictions about things that I think are very important. And it is equally as difficult for the guy that wrote How to Human to come into conversation or to see somebody. I've got to put my money where my mouth is, to see somebody that may vehemently disagree with my point of view. And I think the first thing that I would say with this is most of the time we're seeing these people from a distance. And if there is just one thing that I could tell anyone listening to your podcast right now to do to break the habit of seeing somebody from a distance, and then all you'd see when you see from a distance, think about it. You see somebody from a distance and you just, you see kind of a blurry image of who they are. You see, maybe you can kind of see the color that they're wearing, but you definitely can't see the intricacies of who they are. I would say not the first thing we would want to do is to pull out our binoculars, right? That's what we do. It's like, oh, you know what? I'm going to pull out my binoculars, Carlos, and then I'm going to see them. So we pull out our binoculars, and guess what? When you look through binoculars, I mean, if you've ever gone on a game drive or something, not only is it so difficult to spot the thing that you're trying to see through the binoculars because suddenly your point of view is so small, but when you look through the binoculars and you finally see that thing, if it even remotely moves, it's hard to like keep up. So it's a horrible way to see somebody from a distance with binoculars. You know what you actually have to do? You actually have to get close. Proximity is going to be the key to actually seeing them, because once you're close, you don't have to see binoculars anymore, and they can move quickly and you can still see everything about them, right? And
that is so good. I love that. The difference between looking at somebody through binoculars and actually getting closer.
You know, I'll tell you this, Jonathan, if it wasn't for your question, I've never actually said that in my life, and I've never actually thought of that until you said that. But I thought, what would it look like? I mean, literally, as I was just talking, you just came up with that right now. Like, but it's so true, right? Like, I just think, well, I've looked, if I go deer hunting or if I'm, whatever, and I'm looking through the binoculars, it's so easy to lose them. Like, you can see them clearly for a second, but if they move at all, and so get close. Proximity really helps you, because when you're close to somebody, now you can see their eyes. Now you can see that, wow, guess what? When they're talking about this, they're tearing up. That means that there must be some pain associated with their point of view. There must be something true that has happened to them that has pressed them towards believing this. So you may not agree with their point of view by the end of the conversation, but you can definitely empathize a lot better when you get up close.
Yeah, that's great. So speaking of getting up close and seeing what you see instead of what you think you're going to see, man, I love the story in your book about your neighbor, James.
Yeah.
Would you tell that story?
Absolutely. You drove right by his house.
That's right.
Yeah. So here's the thing. 2020 was a really difficult year for me, as I was using my platform to teach on, all things like reconciliation, racial reconciliation, racism in general, racial bias. So here I am every day talking about that on my platform and doing it in what I feel like is a very safe, grace-filled way. But it's still triggering for a lot of people, obviously. And so here I am every day just kind of wounded by it. And then it's like all these riots are happening around the country. I am just, it's hard down here in Nashville, Tennessee for me. And sure enough, like I live in a great neighborhood. All my neighbors I've become friends with. I've lived here about 6-7 years, but there was this one neighbor across the street from me, kind of catty-cornered from my house, that I had tried for years to smile at him, wave at him. I mean, we had been like 8 feet apart from each other mowing our grass, and I'll like look at him, wave, and that man just would not give me the time of day. And let me tell you where as a black man living in Nashville, Tennessee, where my heart went to immediately. So, I need your listeners to hang on for the end of the story, because the beginning of the story may be triggering, but this was an older white gentleman, probably 70 years old. And he had this big American flag draped from his door. And I immediately assumed that this man didn't like me because I was black. Now let me, for those that are still here, explain this. Like I love America. I love the flag. I am the son of a first-generation immigrant. This country has given my family everything. But the 11 or 12 times that I've been called the N-word in Nashville or Middle Tennessee, whether it be fly fishing at the Caney Fork or whatever, every single time has been, and it's been 11 times. Trust me, I remember all of them. It's been by an older white gentleman with an American flag either on their torso or on their truck. And so what did that do? It did the exact same thing I've been trying to teach my platform. It created a racial bias inside of me towards older white men with American flags near them. And so because of my bias, which was created by true circumstances. Okay.
Right.
So all of our biases are created by truth in some way, shape, or form. My bias was he didn't like me because what I look like. So all that to say, to lead to the fun part of the story is I can't remember what I was doing. I was in my yard for something, and I see this, crotchety old white man come out to his front yard with a paint bucket in his hand. And he had these 2 porcelain bunnies in his front yard. And I'll never forget, he kneels down in front of the the two bunnies, and he dips his paintbrush in the can and he starts to paint one of the bunnies black. And I remember thinking like, okay, that's kind of weird. Like, why is he doing that? Is it like Paint Your Bunny Black Day for like veterans or something? I don't know. And sure enough, he paints one of them black. He puts the cap back on the paint bucket and he walks back into his home.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what? That's weird. So I walked in my house and I was like, babe, do you know why that old man across the street that doesn't like me would have painted a bunny black? And she goes, well, why don't you walk across the street and ask him? Now, here I am talking about seeing people up close, right? Not looking at people through binoculars. I realized in that moment, I'd been looking at this man through a binocular the whole time. I'd never gone up close. So the next day when I see him out, he was getting his mail. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to do this. I realized I've never actually walked across the street. So I start recording on my phone because this is 2020. And as a black guy, like I'm just always recording any interaction that I thought maybe could lead to something bad. So I'm just kind of recording my feet as I'm walking across the street. And I walk, I'm like, excuse me, sir. Hi, my name's Carlos. I live across the street, as if he didn't know. And he goes, suddenly a smile as big as the state of Texas spread across this man's face. He goes, hi, Carlos, my name's James. I've only lived here since 1960 something or whatever. And I was like, my jaw dropped that he had smiled and was so kind. Yeah. And immediately my bias was disintegrating before my eyes. And he starts, we start chatting for a second. And I said, can you tell me why you painted that bunny black? And he said, oh, Carlos, with everything that's going on with race in America, and all the conversations that are happening, this was my way of saying that your life matters. This was my way of, I know I maybe could have done something bigger or louder, but I felt like this was just appropriate for me to paint one bunny black and one bunny white. When I was growing up here in Nashville, my parents hired a servant and she was a black woman. And she taught me how to read. She taught me how to write. She taught me how to brush my teeth. She taught me everything. And I can't imagine anyone looking at her any different than me. So I just thought this was something I could do. And can I tell you something, Jonathan? My jaw was hanging on the floor and it immediately showed me what happens when you get close, when proximity is the thing to see somebody. And now James and I, man, we're the best of friends. We talk all the time. We're hanging out. I think he just wanted to live his best retired life, and poor James is Carlos intruding on his life now. And he's on my Insta stories, and it's pretty cool. But that's a story on how to see somebody and what really happened when I got close.
Yeah, right. You had your idea in your head. You had the story, right?
Yep.
And that story got altered, if not blown up by actually seeing what was in front of you. I love it. Now, although there was one little detail about that story that, if you don't mind, I'd like to talk about a little bit.
Yeah.
And that is, there were people in your online world who took that, who thought the main message of that story is, see, black folks are prejudiced too.
Yeah.
Black folks are racist too. And therefore now I don't have to rethink anything. So tell me about that, because that would be frustrating, right? This is a story that you feel like has a pretty clear message.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
And yet people, there's such thing as willful misunderstanding.
Yes.
And there's a whole lot of it going on.
And I had to get on Instagram the next day and literally like address that, because people, that story had been shared by a bunch of really large Instagram accounts, had gone viral. And people were using it to literally say, look, black people are racist too. And I was like, wait, how can you really truly misunderstand the point of what this is? And, again, I wrote this book, so I have to try to figure it out as much as I can, and walk the walk as much as I talk the talk. So to those people, I would constantly send them video messages, even followers of mine say, hey, actually, like the point of this isn't for you to stop trying to understand racism. The point of this isn't for you to be like, oh, it's not a problem for just white people, it's a problem for black people too. Like, it's still a bigger problem for black people in America. But what I'm trying to do is go first. And I just tried to go first so that you can see, wow, if Carlos can do this, I can do this too. So the point isn't to not do something. The point is actually to be pulled to actually do something and walk up to that person that you may completely vehemently disagree with and just get close. And so, yeah, there's always going to be people that take your message and take it in a different direction. But I use that story in every talk, the corporate talk that I do as I'm traveling around America. I use it, and it is powerful, for everybody in the room to see that I went first. And if I can do it, if I can face my bias, you can too.
Love it. Okay. Let's talk about the role of courage in the life of somebody who does creative work, right? So your main creative, you correct me if I'm wrong, you mentioned that you've written 5 books, but I still think of you as Instagram as being your main creative, the content you're creating. Is that
every day? I mean that's what I'm doing every day. Yes, I've written 5 books, and I do that in chunks and seasons, but I spend the majority of my time creating content for Instagram. Yeah.
And so, as you said, you have a gift for being winsome in your approach to the way you talk about issues. But when in 2020, I guess it was 2020 when Ahmaud Arbery got killed, and you made a video that was maybe a little more direct than usual.
Yeah,
and you knew that was a risk.
Yeah,
to post that.
Yeah,
and as it turns out, it was indeed as a bigger risk as you thought it was going to be. Right, you lost.
It was.
Over the course of a few days, you lost 11,000 of your
and I only had 30,000 followers, so I lost a third of what I'd been building for 7 years.
Yeah. So you knew there was a cost.
Yep.
You knew there was going to be a cost. You decided to pay the cost anyway.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me about that?
Yeah, I think all of your listeners that are listening to this that are creatives or authors or writers or content creators, whatever it may be, they have the conversation in their head when something happens in America, if they're in America, when something happens in their community that is controversial, we all have the conversation in our head of like, well, do I talk about this or do I not talk about this? And 99 times out of 100, myself included, we're like, nah, I'm not going to talk about this. Yeah. And why would we do that? Well, because we don't want to be misunderstood. Even though we may think it's very important, it's very hard to be clearly understood in the communication vessels that we have these days. But I just felt like this was a season in my life where I needed to talk about this as a Black guy living in the South. And so I did. And so I made a video. I can't remember what it was called. It was like what my Black friend or what my white friends can do for the Black community right now or something. It was literally, bro, it was like the softest, most vanilla, kindest video. I mean, it was the most pillow landing of a video I've ever done.
Okay.
But I did talk about it. I talked about Ahmaud. I talked about what I was feeling. I was talking about experiences I had. Woke up the next day after I posted the video, because again, my content at that point was either deeply faith-based about, kind of how you can, work on your spiritual life, or it was like about the birds in my backyard. Like it was just nothing controversial. So I talk about it, and I remember being nervous about posting it, but feeling the conviction. Like I felt it in my ethos. Like this is coming from deep within. I posted it. Woke up the next morning, had lost thousands and thousands of followers. And not only had I lost them, but they let me know in my DMs why they were leaving. Very hurtful day. And I'll be honest with you. I did what every creative that I know probably would have thought about doing. I opened the post up and I hit delete. Mm-hmm. And I thought, okay, well, nope. Apparently this was a bad idea. This is my whole career in front of me. Like I can't do this. So I hit delete, and another pop-up window popped up on Instagram. It was so funny. I don't know if I've ever seen this window pop up, and it said, "Are you sure?" And I just felt like that. I mean, if there was ever a spiritual moment in my life where I was reminded by something greater than me that maybe I don't need to delete this, that was it. And so I said no, and I clicked no, and I left the video up, and people continued to unfollow me. And there was a risk into speaking my truth out into, the atmosphere. There was a big risk. And guess what? The risk, like everything I was scared of actually happened. Like it was actually, my fears came true, right? there was, I lost things. My wife and I started literally looking like, well, I wonder what else I can do with my life, because nobody's ever going to read my books anymore. Nobody's ever going to, and I spent a couple days sulking, until I was like, wait a second, is that the last video you're ever going to post? No, there were, if you read the comments, Carlos, there were people that were deeply impacted in a good way by this. Yeah. Keep talking to them. Yeah. So
I'll tell you who else was impacted in a good way by it. Maybe some of the people who left.
Well, there's a story for that one too. Yes. Because the people that left, as I began to continue to create content, helping people with this, my following began to grow. And suddenly I was back at 30,000 followers, and I was like, oh my gosh. And literally this was only a couple weeks later. I'm like, it took me 7 freaking years to build 30,000 followers. And now I got 10,000 back, or 20, whatever, in a week. And then it was 50, then it was 70. And then I started seeing the exact same people that left coming back. And here's the thing that I learned from that is that as a human condition, we have to know that there's going to be some people that aren't ready to hear what we have to hear. And if they're not ready, we can't, that should not offend us, because I'm not ready to hear some things that I need to hear. And so some people are going to need to stop reading your writing for a little bit. Some people are going to need to stop watching the videos that you create. Some people are going to need a little bit of a break from you. And then maybe they're going to grow and get to the place where they can be able to hear it again. And that's what ended up happening. And I'm not going to say everybody that left came back, but a lot of people that left came back. And just as they let me know that they left, they let me know that they came back. And that's the fruit of the work. That's where I'm like, I would never have gotten to feel what it felt like for somebody to come back and let me know why, had I never let them leave in the first place. And so, as creatives, man, we are emotional, words of affirmation people. Yeah, and that's a hard thing to do. But I promise you, it's one of the greatest things you can do is be true to what you're called to write and to create, even if some people aren't ready for it.
Yeah. Now, I feel like we also have to say the moral of the story is not, if you take the risk and people go away, they'll eventually come back.
No,
right? That's what happened in your story. And I'm glad that happened in your story, but we still have to take the risk, even if it means people go away and they don't come back.
Yeah. I mean, you have to take that risk. I just had a friend of mine post something on Instagram. Let me see if I can find it while we're talking. And he talked about how, he's a creative, he's an author. He's he's somebody that makes videos. His name's Mike Foster. You can follow him at Mike Foster 2000. And he put something up. I can't find it right now, but he put something up where it was a reel saying, hey guys, I need to admit something to you. He does these workshops where, people fly to San Diego, and he sits with like 20 people in his living room and changes their life. He's amazing. He's like, I just had to cancel my strongest marriage workshop because after promoting it for 6 weeks, only one person signed up. And I'm embarrassed, but I'm actually telling you this because I feel like this is more the reality than all the success stories that we read. Yeah. You need to know that me, who has a career, full-time life coaching people, it's a very successful career. I'd planned all the meals, all the activities, and out of the 20 slots, only one person signed up, and I'm embarrassed. And I almost wanted to take all the posts down because I didn't want anyone to know. But I need you to know that it's still worth the risk. And I'm going to risk again launching another one, even though no one showed up to this one. And so, he posts that. And I just think of all the times that you're saying exactly what you're saying. We're going to risk some things. And guess what? Maybe nobody agrees. Maybe nobody shows up. That is the risk in being a creative, in being an author, in being, all the things that you may post something that an Instagram post where you poured your heart out and nobody likes it. Nobody comments, but then you post a meme of something stupid and it gets shared 7,000 times, Yeah. Right. So yeah, people may leave and never come back.
I'm sorry.
That's the walk. Yeah. But that's the walk we got to walk.
Yeah. Another thing, and I find this I take great comfort or hope or something from this. The fact that the kind of response I get from something I put out in the world, there's not a one-to-one relationship between how much effort I put into it or how awesome I thought it was going to be. Like, something I thought was sort of I dashed off quickly. Yeah. Turns out it was meeting people where they were.
Yes.
And you get good feedback from that. Whereas something I thought, okay, now the world is going to be changed by this thing I just wrote, and it doesn't. And it's really helpful to know I'm not in complete control of
this. Yeah, I mean, it is, you're not, you can only be obedient to what it is you need to do. Literally, dude, like my book that's coming out, How to Human, the very first review I got of that book, like the very first official review, was like 2 out of 5 stars. Like my first one, my marketing person sent it was from Publishers Weekly. Okay. And I felt exactly what you think I felt. I was like, oh my gosh, like, is this going to, and I'm actually so glad that was the first review that I got, because it made me realize, especially when I read the review, I was like, this actually it feels like it's coming from somebody that's not ready to hear it. And I know that there's going to be people that aren't ready to do this. And that's actually fine, but man, talk about, having to do it, even though, you're going to have some of that stuff happen. I think it's important.
One of my books in the Amazon, this was such a gift. In the Amazon reviews, adjacent to one another were 2 1-star reviews.
Yeah, there you go.
And it was 1-star reviews for the exact opposite reasons. Like maybe one could be true, but they couldn't both be true.
Right.
And it was like, one said it was way too Catholic, and one was like, I must hate Catholics. And
awesome.
Of course, it definitely wasn't way too Catholic, and I definitely don't hate Catholics. And it was just really it helped me reframe what I think about reviews.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I mean, it is. That's the hardest part for me. And honestly, like, I don't read them a lot. I don't read reviews, like, just for my, like, I have very honest people in my life that will help me make the things that I make better. And so I will, every once in a while read a bad review so that I feel like there is truth that I can pull out of what that is. But again, the majority, for all of us, the majority of people that read what we're going to read are reading it because they want our message. And, we can't put too much salt into it. So.
And by the way, those the 1-star reviews help me make sense of 1-star reviews, but also help me know what to do with 5-star reviews too.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right, man.
You can't take either of it all that seriously.
I love that, man. I love that. So good.
Okay, one of your refrains is, I don't stand on issues, I walk with people. Mm-hmm. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, as I'm trying to walk this walk, I made it very clear in 2020 that I was very passionate about certain issues. Mm-hmm. And that was the year that I realized I had really close friends of mine that were also very passionate about that issue, but were passionate the opposite way of how I was passionate. And suddenly I had to make a decision. Mm-hmm. Am I going to walk with them, or am I going to just make a point? Mm. And that has become my kind of phrase on how I live. Yeah. I learned it from a pastor friend of mine, Mike Ashcroft in North Carolina. And he told me one day, he's like, Carlos, I know that you feel very strongly about that, but you can't stand on the issue. You have to walk with the people that the issue is affecting. And bro, did that not change the trajectory of my life? Because what that did was, now it forced me into, again, that we can go back to the binocular thing, putting the binoculars down and getting close and walking with the people. Does that mean that I'm going to change my mind on the issue? No, but it just means that I'm going to face them. And when you're that close, you can't help but develop empathy. And so I tell people all the time, people ask me, Carlos, where do you stand on this issue? I say, I don't stand on that issue. I walk with people. I don't stand on issues. I walk with people, and people hate it. When they want to get an answer out of me, they hate it. But I'm like, I'm not going to give you you just want to hear it for the sake of entertainment. But I'm going to, this issue is a person, so I'm going to walk with that person during 2020. And I was very passionate about, the Black male experience in America. I have a very close friend of mine that is a SWAT team member in Los Angeles. And I remember the moment that we're FaceTiming each other, having a hard conversation about some policing things and about his opinions on some things, when I felt the prompting in me to be like, you know what? I need to go on a ride along with him. So I bought a plane ticket and I flew to LA and I went on a ride along. And can I tell you something? There were some things that shifted inside of me because I love this man with everything inside of me and I want him alive and I want him protected. And so suddenly my opinion on some issues, it shifted some. But why did that happen? Because I got up close and I walked with him. And I just think that it's important for people on any side of any issue to really walk with people, because people are issues. Issues aren't people.
Yeah. Well, so you say you walk with people instead of standing on issues. Have there been situations where you've had to say, you know what, I'm sorry, I just can't walk with you? Yeah.
So there's, obviously it's a you can't encompass the entirety of a statement in a statement, right? And so there's people like here's the deal. I mean, here's a great example. I'm not tomorrow going to go look up the local KKK rally here in Middle Tennessee and go walking into that rally and be like, hey guys, I'm here to walk with you. Like that would be, that'd be stupid. So like we have to protect our mental health. We have to protect our spiritual health. We have to protect our physical health. There's some people that are just mean, flat out mean. And you can attempt, but if that attempt falls on flat ears, it's not for you. There's some people that you're just not going to be able to. So take it with a grain of salt. But just because there are people that you're not going to be able to walk with does not exclude you from having to find people that you can walk with. Yeah. And so, there definitely are going to be people that you can't.
Yeah. Hey, let me ask you about something you said. You said it 15, 20 minutes ago, and I didn't have a chance to ask you then, but I want to ask you now. You used the phrase something about telling my truth.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Because the things you've been describing, it sounds like you're telling the truth.
Sure.
Not just your truth, right? I mean,
sure.
What's the relationship between my truth and the truth?
Yeah. I think everything has, there is truth in the world that anybody knows that 1 + 1 = 2. That's true. Mm-hmm. Like it's just true. And then I have my truth on how, and I think I was talking about it in the racism conversation with men that have called me the N-word. That's true to me, right? Now, what's not true is that every old white Southern man is a racist. Okay, so that's not true. But it became true in my head because of my bias. So what became true to me actually isn't true, because James wasn't a racist, and that wasn't true. But we all we have to know that people. Okay, so listen. How to Human isn't all about racism, but this is a big part of my story. So let's talk about racist people or people that at a KKK rally. There's a reason why they believe that. Okay, there has been something that has happened to them that has formed something that is true to them that may not be true of all people of a certain race, but maybe something has happened to them that is true to them. So they're walking in their truth, but they may be believing something that is untrue about, people all the time that have been affected by trauma, that have been abused. I know people that have been abused by the church. And so their truth is that they've been abused by the church. So they view the entirety of the church as abusive. I know that that's not true, because I know church leaders that aren't abusive, but that doesn't diminish their truth that they have experienced that. What it is not true is that the entirety of whatever it is they view is that way. And so that's kind of how I like to walk that my truth, the truth thing is there's always going to be something true for the person that believes what they believe.
Right. Yeah. I think it's helpful to think in terms of, to talk about subjective experience and to talk about it's not to say that there's no ultimate truth, there's no objective truth. Right. It's not you either believe in objective truth or you believe in subjective truth. It's like, no, we there are things that are true. What is real is that which remains true, whether I believe it or not. Right.
People would say that it's true that Carlos is a good person, but the person that I wasn't a good person to, that's not true. So the human condition allows for this my truth thing to be a true thing. Yeah.
Right. All right. I want to ask you about something. You say you sometimes go for a drive where you don't know where you are and you turn off the GPS.
Yes.
Why do you do that? Yeah. I think this is a great thing for writers and people who do creative work to do.
Yes. Yes. Well, here's the thing. Like in How to Human, I really do. I talk about the human condition, and it's divided into B human, C humans, free humans. The C, we've been talking about the C human part and the free human part, but the B human part is really about like we've lost the humanity in us, man. Like, this is a great example. Like when you came driving by my house, we both laughed that we're going to be doing a podcast and you were literally, I don't know, a couple hundred yards away from me. Yeah. And we're having this human interaction on a screen. Right.
Yeah,
right. So because things have become easier for us, we've lost some of this human things. And one of the things that we've lost is getting lost. Like we don't get lost anymore. And so I'd love to turn off my GPS and try to figure out where I'm going. And guess what? When I do that, when I don't have my directions on my iPhone, even if I just like, I don't know if any your listeners are old enough to remember like MapQuest that you would like print off of your printer and like you're having to read it and you're like, okay, like where am I? There's something truly human about getting lost. And when you're lost, you notice things. Yeah. When you're lost, you see things around you that you never would have seen. When you're not looking at your phone and listening to Siri telling you to turn left, you are noticing so much more. And I believe your creativity explodes as well. And so, man, I get lost all the time now, just so that my mind can get sparked. I can see new things. I can wow, I've never seen that tree there. I mean, the other day I turned my GPS off, going somewhere, and I'd been to this place numerous times before. I was like, I'm going to try to go this way today. And I ran across this tree. It was the biggest tree I've ever seen in Nashville, Tennessee. And I got out of the car and I just sat under this tree. And there was actually a plaque on the tree on how old the tree was. And I never would have had this moment with this tree had I had my GPS on and just gone there. So I just think that we become more alive and more human when we get lost a little bit more.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's a great idea. It's kind of like, in the old days, to go to find something in the library, you'd have to walk down the stacks, and who knows what you'd see on your way.
Totally.
And now you just get the answer from Google, and there's no side trips.
Yep.
Well, I guess there could be side trips on Google, but
right.
The great thing about Google is that it's efficient, and the bad thing about Google is it's efficient.
It's true. It's true.
All right. Last question. Who are the writers who make you want to write, Carlos?
Oh, yeah. I love that. Well, I'll just pull them out behind me right here. Oh, I hope I have it. Okay. So I am, if you read my books, they're memoir-esque, like they're old stories of my life. Eddie Hillesum was probably, she was like the unknown Anne Frank. And she's got these letters called.
Will you spell that, by the way, yes, Eddie?
Yep. Etty Hillesum, Hillesum. Great. And this last year I have devoured, I can't even remember how I found her. Yeah. But I have devoured her writings and her letters. And she makes me literally, I read this book and I was like, oh my gosh, I got to go journal now. And because she made me want to do that. So Eddie is one of them that does that. Here's another.
What era? You said is she from Anne Frank's era?
Yeah, so she was actually in Amsterdam during the Holocaust.
Really?
And so her letters, she was a little older than Anne Frank, so she's probably in her early 20s. Uh-huh. But gosh, she is her story is amazing.
I've never heard of her.
Oh my gosh, you're going to devour her letters. I mean, she's got letters from when her journal started before the occupation, and then she just writes letters and journals through the occupation, while she's still free to walk the streets and go to the cafes in Amsterdam, madly in love with people, to the occupation, to her going to a concentration camp, the whole thing. It's actually amazing. And then I just got into a fiction writer, Lisa Jewell.
Okay.
And so it's just that typical thriller, writer that just kind of keeps you turning the pages.
Yeah.
And I'm a big reader. Like, I love to read like fiction, and I love to read thrillers, and I love to read older historical kind of memoirs as well. And so they're two recently that make me want to write.
Well, great. Well, thanks for telling me about those. I didn't know either of those writers.
Perfect.
And let me reiterate something you mentioned before. Your book is not a book about race. We ended up on that topic for whatever reason. Because we started with James. That kind of headed us. The James story is
my story. Yeah.
Yeah, right. The James story is such a great story, and that kind of headed us down the path of race. But a lot of great. I love your insights about race in there, but I love your insights about a lot of other things too.
Yeah,
so I just wanted to mention that this is not just
thank you.
It's a more. It covers a lot of human. It's how to human, right?
How to human, man. All of us need it. I think all of us need that recalibration.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks for being here, Carlos. I really appreciate it.
Well, you know where I live now, Jonathan. So stop by my front porch for a cup of coffee sometime.
Sounds great.
All right.
This podcast is brought to you by The Rabbit Room, where art nourishes community and community nourishes art. And all our podcasts are made possible by the generous support of our members. To learn more about us, visit rabbitroom.com. And to become a member, rabbitroom.com/donate.
If you've enjoyed this podcast episode, consider joining the Rabbit Room membership. Your membership helps sustain this community, funding everything from publishing and podcasts and theater productions to events and programs that support artists who create with a Christ-centered vision. We'd love to have you on board. Learn more at rabbitroom.com/member.